Hi everyone, this is Blue, and today we're going to talk about verbs in infinitive. So today we'll cover verbs in Serbian that are in infinitive. So when we talk about verbs in infinitive, it is the endings that appear in infinitive, but also the root form of verbs and how to get them. There are two endings for verbs in Serbian, and those are ti and chi. For verbs that end in T, it is quite simple to get the root form. So for example, if you have the verb raditi, which is to work, you just delete the ending T and that's your base. So in this case, the root form would be radi. If you have a verb to love, voleti, again, you just delete T and you get vole. The root form of the verb to write, which is pisati, is pisa. What about the verbs that end in chi? Well, it gets a bit more complicated. Let me give you an example of the verb in chi. So, for example, if you want to say to tell, then it would be reći. So in this case, what you would do is you would put the verb in first person singular in aorist, which is a tense in Serbian, and then you delete the ending and then you would get the base form. Let me just preface that it is not essential for you to know aorist. This is something you will encounter later on when you acquire at more proficient levels of acquiring Serbian. And to be honest, I don't really use aorist that often. I think I use it maybe 1% of the time, so it is essential for you to know what it is and what it conveys. But I will just give you an example just for you to know that it's not as easy to get the root form in for verbs that end in chi, but I just want to illustrate it to you. So in this case, the first person singular of reći would be rekoh. Then you delete oh or oh, and then you get the root form rek. So in the beginning, I told you there are two endings, ti and chi. In this second group of verbs, also verbs that end in sti, which is a variation of ti basically, belong to. So how does this look like? If I have a verb sesti, which is to sit down, then in aorist, this will be sedoh. We delete the oh, it's so funny, or oh, and then we get sed. So I just wanted to kind of illustrate to you that it's not as easy to get the root form of a verb in infinitive, but for you what's essential to know is that there are two endings, ti and chi, and everything else will become more important in the future, but for now, just forget about the root form of the verb. Yet, you cannot use these verbs on their own. The way you use them is just to complete the meaning of some other verb. And there are several ways of doing that. For example, you can use it in the future. If I want to say, I will pass the exam, in Serbian, you can say, položit ću ispit. In this form, you don't use the pronoun because the verb položit ću, which means I will pass, has all the necessary information. So in this case, we don't use infinitive, položit ću ispit, ispit being the exam. But there's another way how you can say things in the future in Serbian. So it's the same tense, but just a slightly different form, depending on if you use the pronoun or if you don't. So if you want to use the pronoun, one of the ways how you can say that you will pass the exam will be ja ću položiti ispit. Ja ću položiti ispit. As you already know, in Serbian, we sometimes omit pronouns because they're not necessary, but you can use also this form, so you will definitely encounter it in Serbia. What is all of this? So we have ja, which is I, ću, which is the auxiliary that you've also seen in položit ću, which is usually at the end of the verb, right? And then you have položiti, and this is our verb in infinitive, to pass položiti, and of course the exam, ispit. So as you can see, there are two ways how to express something in the future. And we have another tense expressing events in the future, but I'll get to that maybe in several months. Another way of using infinitive is with modal verbs. So for example, if you want to say, you have to buy a present, let's say you're going somewhere, then you can say, moraš da kupiš poklon. Again, there's no infinitive here, so what's actually going on? Quite literally, this will be moraš da, you have to, kupiš, buy, and poklon is present. Yet, there's another way how you can convey the same meaning. You can just say, moraš kupiti poklon. and it basically means the same thing. And this is something that I've noticed that in different parts of Serbia, but also in extended countries that use a variety of the language, they sometimes prefer more moraš kupiti, and I usually use moraš da kupiš, but it would be very interesting to do a survey and see what's the preference, because for me the meaning is basically the same. Also, you can use infinitive with the verb to need, literally translated, although it's very difficult to translate things from Serbian to English and English to Serbian, because I just feel like there's so many meanings and uses to these verbs, so I'm just gonna use one translation, but you should know that there are many other ones. So let's say we should pay the bills. Treba da platimo račune. Treba is should or need to, ought to, let's say it like that. Da platimo is to pay, but if you see the ending mo, it's the first person plural, so that means we, and račune is bills. So you can just say we should pay the bills, right? Like you explicitly say who should do it, but there's another way how you can express this. So you can just say treba platiti račune, and here platiti is the verb in infinitive, so to pay, platiti. Why can we use both? Well, from my experience, if you say treba platiti račune, it's kind of like staying away and not necessarily saying who should pay the bills, who explicitly, maybe you, maybe me, maybe both of us. So it's pretty much like someone or like one should pay the bills, ought to pay the bills. So that's a bit more indirect, but it basically means the same thing. And another use of infinitive is if you want to use it as a noun. So if you want to say brushing teeth is good, then you can say prati zube je dobro. To brush, prati, which also means to wash. Then we have zube, teeth, je is dobro, good. Ta. So there you go. Verbs in infinitive are important. It is essential for you to know what the endings are, and it is essential for you to know that you will encounter them and they do have a meaning. I hope this was understandable enough, and see you in the next video. Pozdrav!